open with intellect, but the flow is like incest with degenerates. Fucking stupid and fine of interest as I interject. I move.
What's up, guys? It's your boy, WilgansTV. And if you're like me and you were mesmerized by the masterclass Inter Milan put on during the Barcelona game, you're not alone. Football Made Simple got us with a video that they just dropped today. The video's titled, How Inter's Tactics Did the Impossible. Tactical Analysis, Barcelona 3, Inter Milan 4. Let's get right into it, man.
If we take it a step further, we believe it's what happens in the defensive phases that determines the game. But Inter Milan versus Barcelona was decided by the fleeting seconds between these two phases of play. The beautiful game was alive and well, and the tactics in this match were fascinating across both legs. But let's not waste any time and first look at Barcelona in possession, as they ended with 71% of the ball. Early in the match, Inter were a force, pressing with a ferocity even from the Barcelona goal kicks, with the front two readying the immediate pressure on the two centre-backs, with Dumfries and DeMarco backing this up, as they were confident that the physical back three could handle anything that came over the top. And this was the case, with Szczesny in the opening exchanges being forced long, more often than not resulting in turnovers.
That press.
And this theme carried on in open play, with Inter Milan often taking up a similar pressing shape, although Barella was the glue in the press due to his injury. Whenever Thuram or Martinez were caught out of position temporarily or pressing the goalkeeper, Barella never hesitated, always keeping De Jong in his cover shadow while pressing the remaining centre-back to ensure that Barcelona's backline never had the room to breathe. In the early stages, it was a combination of Inter's mentality and their setup that made the press successful, because the midfield was always backing up the press. The deadliest pressure comes not from individuals hunting, but from units coordinated. And the opening goal shows shades of this, with DeMarco and Dumfries' aggressive positioning in attack and in the press in general, allowing DeMarco to be involved in the counter-press and helping Inter win the ball.
How do you press and you don't leave space
is still high,
for Barcelona to go up
on a
That's
play
crazy.
for Martinez. But the Inter pressing shape was also showing that there were gaps that the Blaugrana could exploit. The positioning of the Barcelona wingers was always a consideration for Inter, as whenever the wing-backs did press, it meant that they were exposing these spaces behind them, and this could lead to a Barca winger receiving freely, or more likely, a wide centre-back being dragged into an isolated position. Not a good situation. Sensing this, at times we did see hesitation from the pressing wing-backs, resulting in situations like this, where the Inter forwards are doing their job in the press.
Bro, press like this, the wing-backs have to work,
due to worrying about Rafinha moving wide behind him. This gives Martin the space to get his head up and play a line-breaking pass, eventually finding Rafinha in the position vacated by Dumfries. As a result, especially once Inter were ahead, Dumfries was more conservative in the press, happy to allow Martin to have this space to advance because he was not an attacking threat. So Inter did not mind the left back getting the ball and advancing. Or at least that was the thinking, because we'll get to how Martin changed in the second half. But the problem for Barca in the opening exchanges was clear. The man-to-man press against their backline meant that they could not get into controlled possession phases, and the pain of Balde was clear at times. His presence means that in scenarios like this, it's easy for usually Koundé to tuck in as the third man, with the left back providing genuine threat high up the pitch. This would now mean that Barcelona have a 3 versus 2 advantage here, using just their defenders. But in the first half, Martin was not that big an attacking threat, while at the same time he was not expected to invert into the back line. So instead it had to be Frenkie de Jong, who was almost a full-time central centre-back in the build-up, just to allow Barcelona to hold onto the ball using this 3 versus 2. But this in turn often forced Pedri or Olmo into a deeper position. Having de Jong here for prolonged periods was not ideal, as one of Flick's marquee strategies is having his midfielders high up to allow them to create central overloads. And we saw this in fits and spurts, and how threatening Barcelona could be when all 3 of their midfielders were higher up. We saw this when Inter were pressing a little less and Barcelona got into settled position. And rather than actually using a 4-2-3-1, or always having 2 free 8s, Pedri and Olmo operated deeper in almost a traditional 4-3-3, with the key being always looking to remain on Barella and Mkhitaryan's blind sides for a key reason. Particularly down the Barcelona right, we saw Yamal looking to receive deeper than usual, and DeMarco, trying to remain touch-tight as always, will be drawn up the pitch. And because of Olmo's positioning behind Mkhitaryan, Bastoni had to push extremely high up, as Mkhitaryan could not pick up Olmo. And this left massive gaps on this right-hand side, which could be the perfect opportunity for Olmo, or even rarely Pedri when he drifted across, to make the run into. At the same time, it created not just isolations for Yamal, but isolations with plenty of room behind his man, which had an Achilles. But here's the thing, trailing, Barcelona began to pour more and more men forwards, and here's the beauty of Inter. As much as possible when defending, they kept the front too high, meaning when Inter won the ball, they always had at least 2 outlet options who were expert at playing off of each other. And Thuram in particular was masterful in holding up the ball and bringing his mates into the game. But Inter were not just hitting and hoping to the front too. The likes of Barella and the 2 wingbacks were looking to provide plenty of support whenever possible. A defining factor in this match was that these teams had 2 things in common. Whenever they lost the ball, they looked to counter-press. When they won the ball, they looked to be extremely vertical in the counter-attack rather than begin a possession phase. This made the transitional phases extremely important because when Barcelona lost the ball in scenarios like this, for example, Inter instantly committed men for those vertical passes. So now, if Inter escaped the initial counter-press, they had acres of space to exploit. But if Barca was successful in the counter-press, they could take advantage of the spaces Inter just vacated behind their wingbacks, and we did see that at times.
Basically, they're basically playing a high risk, high reward defense and offense, bro.
And Inter did exactly the same in transition, looking to use the space behind the Barca fullbacks. Whoever controlled the transitional phases would control the match. And it showed that the modern game's currency isn't just possession, it's decisiveness after possession changes. But the reality is, both sides struggled to control the transitional phases, meaning there was a lot of ping pong going on in the midfield at times. So what changed in the second half? Well, this man right here. Remember that space that Dumfries afforded Martin in the first half so that he could help Bisek cover Rafinha? Well, Martin decided he would now make the most of it and ended the game with the second most touches. The young Spaniard began to attack it more aggressively, but rather than stick to the byline and run into traffic, he produced outstanding crosses from this zone, aided by Barcelona committing plenty of men into the box as they chased the goals they desperately needed.
Damn, these are some beautiful balls.
And down the right-hand side, the individual quality of Yamal continued to shine as he completed a ridiculous 14 dribbles. And in general, Barca created chances that on another day might have nestled in the back of the net. But despite only having 29% of the ball, this was no Catenaccio-style performance from Inter, and in possession they were quite interesting. Inter biased their back 5 to the right-hand side from the goal kick, with the right back moving up to right wing and the right centre-back moving to right back. This forced Barca into their own lopsided shape, with Martin staying deep to handle Dumfries and Rafinha wide, whilst down the right Yamal came narrow on Bastoni and Garcia was hyper-aggressive on DeMarco.
Damn, but that opens it up for like him.
But Inter always had the option to play long to their centre forwards, and importantly, they only used a single midfield pivot in the build-up phase from the goal kick, which in turn allowed Barella and Mkhitaryan to take up these positions, ready to support the wide man or to receive the second ball from the centre forwards. But the real threat came when Inter played short from the goal kick. Barca's left was well protected, but having Garcia so high up left them vulnerable down this flank due to the space in behind. DeMarco and Mkhitaryan consistently combined to take advantage of that space, whether it was DeMarco looking to find the Armenian, but more often, they used 1-2s to get the Italian into dangerous positions in that space, having initially dragged Garcia higher up the field.
You gotta know your personnel to put those.
And in fact, taking advantage of this flank almost led to the opening goal in a different way. The principle is the same. Bastoni dragging Yamal central and DeMarco drawing Garcia. This time though, Bastoni makes the run into the midfield and receives the return ball. And again, Mkhitaryan is there to take advantage of the space, and almost puts in a game-changing cross. And it was clear from the off that Inter would be looking to take advantage of the Barca high line, and they got close on a lot more occasions than they did in the first leg. Firstly, with Thuram timing his runs better, but also using multi-wave runs, with midfield and wing-back runners, meaning that Barcelona not only had to catch the first runner offside, but also the second wave runner. A much tougher proposition. For the entire season, Barcelona has thrived in chaos and always come out on top. But sometimes the champion of Europe isn't crowned for surviving chaos. They're crowned for controlling chaos when it matters. But who do you think will be winning the Champions League this year?
W's. Shout out to Football Made Simple. Gotta drop a comment, man. Because you could watch the game and see the players play, but like they really put thought, like real thought into everything they do on that pitch. But it's not just kicking the ball up, trying to go score a goal. Bro, there's 1-2s, there's pulling players up, pulling players back, getting into space. There's a lot that goes into this, bro. But for me, though, I think PSG win it all. I'm just going to say right now, if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. If I'm right, I'm probably right. Know what I mean? But I think PSG taking it all. Who do you think is about to take it all? Let me know down in the comments. But hey, if you enjoyed this reaction video, go ahead and subscribe. Go ahead and like and comment. I'll see you on the next one. WilgansTV. Out.